Picture this: a forest in colonial New Jersey, August 8th, 1745. A young man stands before a clearing full of Delaware Indians and opens his mouth to preach. He is 27 years old. He is gravely ill. His handkerchief carries the blood he coughed up this morning, and the morning before that, and every morning for 3 years. His hands tremble, not from fear, but from fever. And then something happens that no one in that clearing can explain. The Spirit of God falls like a rushing wind. Hardened warriors begin to weep. Old women collapse under conviction. Children cry out to God in their own language. A revival breaks out in the American wilderness so powerful that news of it reshapes the history of Christian missions on every continent. But here is what you need to understand. That fire did not fall from nowhere. It was lit in secret. It was fed in the dark. It was purchased in the snow. Have you ever felt that God has placed a call on your life that seems impossible given everything you have lost, everything taken, everything that seems to disqualify you? What if the very things that look like they ended your story are the things God used to write it? This is not a story about a man who had everything and gave it up. This is a story about a man who had nothing left, no health, no credentials, no comfort, no prospects, and discovered that when there is nothing left but God, God turns out to be enough. His name was David Brainerd. He lived 29 years. He changed the world. And he did it entirely on his knees. Comment below with "I will not leave my knees" if you are ready to surrender your comfort to God's call. Pray through the silence when no fruit is visible, and keep going when the door out is wide open. And stay with us until the very end of this story, where we will reveal the hidden spiritual disciplines that kept David's fire burning for 4 relentless years in the wilderness. Disciplines that will enable you to run with endurance the race that God has specifically set before you. Haddam, Connecticut. The year is 1718. David Brainerd is born into privilege. His grandfather arrived in the colonies as an indentured servant. Nothing to his name, nobody behind him. But by the time David drew his first breath, the Brainerd name meant something. His father was a wealthy merchant, Speaker of the Connecticut House, and a member of the Governor's Council. David was the 6th of 9 children in a home of political prominence and godly Puritan order. Children in that world were not simply taken to church. They were catechized at home, Latin, grammar, the full doctrines of the faith, so thoroughly that when the minister preached on justification, no one needed an explanation. David Brainerd grew up saturated in the knowledge of God, and yet he did not know God. When David was 9, his father died. When he was 14, his mother followed. He went to live with an older sister, tried farming at 19, inherited his father's land, attempted to build a life from what had been left to him. It did not last. He was a young man without direction, performing his religious duties, doing everything right, and feeling nothing but the crushing awareness that he was not right with God. He paid with his certainty long before he paid with his comfort. The slow collapse of every framework he had been given to make himself acceptable to God. That was the first cost. It was not a tragedy. It was preparation. It was 1739. David was in the woods, alone at the end of himself, when everything changed. For years he had been striving toward God, praying, fasting, performing every religious duty he knew, and feeling nothing but the growing terror that none of it was working, that he was on the outside of the very grace he was reaching for. And then, without warning, without a crowd, without a preacher, God arrived. He described it with trembling restraint. Unspeakable glory, not something he had worked up, something given. He saw the sovereignty of God and, instead of terror, felt joy. He wrote later, "I had been heaping up my devotions before God, fasting, praying, whereas I never once truly intended God's glory, but only my own happiness." That moment did not just change his destination. It exposed his religion and replaced it with something real. Everything before this was preparation. Everything after it was consequence, and the consequence was immediate. A call, not just to believe, to go. The discipline that answered the cost of those empty years was not more effort, it was surrender. He stopped trying to make himself acceptable and received what God had already done. And the moment he received it, he was consumed by the desire to take it to those who had never heard it. In September 1739, David Brainerd enrolled at Yale, the one institution in colonial America built explicitly to produce men for God. He was top of his class. He was also, within months, spitting blood into a cloth and being sent home to recover. He came back, and when he returned, the world was on fire. George Whitefield had swept the colonies, drawing crowds of 20,000 in open fields. When Whitefield came to Yale in October 1740, the campus was set ablaze. But here's the detail no one talks about. Before Whitefield came, Brainerd was already seeking. He and a fellow student named David Youngs had begun meeting privately to pray about the spiritual state of the college. No plan, no strategy. They simply began. About a month into their private seeking, the Great Awakening arrived at Yale. The fire that falls in public is always lit in private. He was already on his knees when the crowd arrived. Rector Thomas Clapp grew hostile to the revival and passed a rule. Any student calling a faculty member unconverted would be expelled. Brainerd had been attending illegal revival meetings, openly criticizing the administration, breaking college rules on multiple occasions. Clapp was watching. Then a freshman overheard a private remark, Brainerd saying of one tutor, "He has no more grace than this chair," and reported it. February 1742. Expelled, he was devastated. He wrote a full confession. Jonathan Edwards, Aaron Burr, and Jonathan Dickinson all interceded on his behalf. Clapp refused every appeal. Brainerd sought reinstatement repeatedly and was denied every time. A recent Connecticut law meant that without a Yale degree, he could not be installed in any church in the colony. The door to the ministry he had planned was not merely closed, it was locked and the key was gone. He paid with his reputation, his career, and the degree that would have opened every door. The cost was total, and what answered that cost was not bitterness, it was redirection. What man uses to disqualify you, God uses to define you. A pastor named Jonathan Dickinson saw what God saw. He connected Brainerd with a society in Scotland for propagating Christian knowledge, a mission organization that had been looking for someone willing to go to the Native Americans. In November 1742, Brainerd was commissioned. The chair remark that ended his academic career became the hinge of world mission history. When Brainerd rode north toward Conowick, New York, in April 1743, he was probably the fifth or sixth person in the history of the New England colonies to attempt full-time ministry among the Native Americans. There was no established field, no strategy, no predecessors to call. He was not joining something. He was starting something, alone, with a disease already killing him. He lodged first with a Dutch family who spoke no English. He spoke no Dutch. Before his own log hut was finished near the Indian settlement, he lived for several weeks inside a native family's dwelling, a remarkable thing for an 18th century Connecticut man from a prominent political household. He was isolated in every direction, could not speak Dutch to his landlord, could not yet speak Delaware to his congregation, alone in every register. He slept on a little heap of straw in a log room without any floor. His diet was boiled corn and ash cakes, no medicine. The night sweats worsened. The blood on the handkerchief was a morning ritual, and something unexpected happened. The poverty of the Indians began to change him. He started giving away his own possessions. He did not go simply to dispense grace to a passive people. He was being formed by them. His chosen poverty was not only principle, it became relationship. He paid with his body, his comfort, and everything he had carried into the forest. The discipline that answered that cost was not complaint, it was consecration. He kept going back. In 1744, real offers came. Settled pastoral positions in Connecticut and Long Island, warmth, salary, a congregation that spoke his language. He turned them down and returned to the wilderness. Not once, repeatedly. He did not stumble into hardship. He chose it every time the door out opened. But what you have not seen yet is the moment that changed everything. It did not happen in a church. It happened on a mountain trail in the wilderness, and it nearly ended him. That is where we are going next. Before we follow David into the deepest wilderness he ever entered, I want to take a moment for the people who make stories like this possible. The research behind each Cloud of Witnesses episode takes weeks of digging through archives and forgotten records. Our members are the reason these stories get told. If you want to be part of the community keeping these hidden legacies alive, hit the join button on the channel homepage or click the membership link in the description. You will not just be supporting a channel, you will be standing with the witnesses themselves. Here is the image the church has never shown you. David Brainerd rides into the forest before dawn. He dismounts, drops to his knees in the snow, and begins to pray. He prays until he is so spent he cannot stand. Sometimes he has convulsions. Sometimes he collapses face first into the snow. His horse has learned to wait. This happened not once, not in a dramatic crisis, but week after week, month after month, across years of ministry where the fruit was invisible and the cold was real. Jonathan Edwards would later record, among all the days he spent in fasting and prayer, there is scarcely an instance of one that was not followed by apparent success and remarkable blessing, often before the day ended. But from inside those days, all Brainerd could see was snow. In October 1744, he made a journey into the Susquehanna River Valley, deep frontier territory, Iroquois villages occupied by people the historical record describes as very fierce, very warlike, and many anti-Christian. He was probably the first Presbyterian missionary to enter that region. On the journey, his horse fell and broke its leg. He killed it himself. Then he walked, on foot, along single-file Indian trails through heavily forested mountain terrain with no roads, coughing blood, going to preach to people who might reject him, a dying man who has just killed the one thing carrying him, continuing on foot into the unknown. That is the image. He wrote in his diary, "I was in such anguish that when I arose from my knees I felt extremely weak and overcome. I cared not how or where I lived, or what hardships I went through, so that I might but gain souls for Christ." And then he wrote this, the line that changes everything. "Oh, for holiness! Oh, for more of God in my soul! Oh, this pleasing pain! It makes my soul press after God." Not grim endurance, pleasing pain. The discipline of the secret place had become, for him, the most alive he ever felt. Fasting, solitary prayer, hours on his knees in snow. These were not things he suffered through. They were where he lived. He paid with his health, his horse, and every year that returned silence instead of fruit. The spiritual discipline that answered all of it was this. He refused to interpret silence as abandonment. He kept meeting God in the secret place regardless of what the visible world returned. June 19th, 1745. Crossweeksung, New Jersey. He finds a displaced community of Delaware Indians, people whose sacred sites have been destroyed, whose social structures have been fractured by colonial pressure, searching for something solid in a world that has taken almost everything from them. He begins to preach. The first to respond are women, and this matters more than it appears. In Delaware culture, women were the keepers of religious knowledge. When women accepted a spiritual message, they carried it through the matrilineal social network with an authority men did not have. When those first Delaware women believed, they went back to their kin. "Come and hear this man." Brainerd had no training in Delaware culture. He was simply preaching the gospel, and God was threading it through channels the missionary could not see. Then the deer came. Brainerd was anxious. Any day the community might scatter to hunt, and he would lose his audience before the revival took hold. A number of deer were killed close to the settlement. Enough meat for weeks. No one needed to go anywhere. The harvest he had prayed toward for 3 years was being guarded by a providence he could not have arranged. And then came August 8th, 1745. He preached to 65 gathered Delaware. The Spirit fell like a rushing mighty wind, and with an astonishing energy bore down all before it. Hardened warriors wept. Elderly women cried out. Children prayed in their own language. He stood in the clearing, watching God do what 3 years of wilderness prayer had been asking for. Within weeks, more than 100 converted. By June 1746, 38 had made public professions of faith. The Crossweeksung revival was not a religious feeling. It was a measurable social transformation. Idolatry abandoned. Drunkenness gone practically overnight. Marriages repaired, debts paid honestly. Money once spent on alcohol redirected to families. Brainerd built schools for the children, taught scripture, counseled families individually, and stood between his people and the land-grabbing white settlers who moved in around the edges, protecting them legally and practically. His pastoral care extended to justice, and then the revival began to preach itself. Converted Delaware went to the huts of new arrivals and told them what had happened. Prayer meetings continued through the night without him. When he later made a final journey toward the Susquehanna, he brought his Delaware converts, and they gave their conversion testimonies to the Susquehanna Indians. He was the preacher, they were the witnesses. The chain of fire had begun to extend within his own lifetime. White settlers came from surrounding areas to watch. The fire lit in secret was visible for miles. In the spring of 1746, he moved the entire Christian community to Cranberry, New Jersey, a permanent, self-sustaining settlement of 130 Christian Indians. His bond had grown so deep that traveling through colonial towns felt wrong. When he rejoined his Delaware congregation, he wrote, "It is so good to be back amongst my people again." The outsider had become an insider. They were his people. The cost had been everything. The fruit was a community, a movement, and a chain of fire that would outlast him by centuries. In March 1747, his body gave out completely. He was forced to say goodbye to his people. Both he and they wept. He would never return. He rode 130 miles in pouring rain, spitting blood the entire journey. Tuberculosis was not merely destroying his lungs. It was spreading through his body, compounding the crushing depression he had carried for years with worsening physical torment at every level. His specific final symptoms included an uncommon kind of hiccough, which either strangled me or threw me into straining to vomit. Now you must understand this to feel the cost, not merely hear it. He stopped first at the home of Jonathan Dickinson in Elizabethtown, New Jersey, too ill to travel further. He lay dying upstairs. Downstairs, during those same months, the first class of what would become Princeton University met. Princeton, one of the great educational institutions in American history, was founded in the house where David Brainerd was dying. He built no institution with his hands, but institutions were being built in the rooms around his deathbed. He was eventually carried to the home of Jonathan Edwards in Northampton, Massachusetts. Edwards had a daughter named Jerusha. She was 17. She became his nurse, his companion, and as the months passed, something deeper formed between them, a bond that those closest to them recognized as love. On October 4th, 5 days before he died, Brainerd took her hand and told her, "We shall spend a happy eternity together." She tended him through the worst of it, the hiccoughs, the fever, the blood. She knew what staying close was costing her. He knew it too. Neither left. David Brainerd died on October 9th, 1747. He was 29. Jerusha was beside him. She contracted tuberculosis from nursing him. 5 months later, on February 14th, 1748, Jerusha Edwards died. She was 17. They buried her beside him. 2 graves, side by side. Northampton, Massachusetts. He gave his life for a people he loved. She gave hers for a man she loved. Neither flinched. The cost of his calling was not contained to him. It consumed the one who drew closest, and she paid it willingly. He gave his life for a people he loved. She gave hers for a man she loved, and they both gave it freely. In his final weeks, young ministers came to receive his last counsel. He told them, "Be diligent in private prayer and fasting. It is the great secret of the gospel." To his brother John, who took up the Cranberry congregation without missing a single day, he wrote his final verdict on everything he had spent. "I would not have spent my life otherwise for the whole world." Jonathan Edwards stood in the empty bedroom, looked at the manuscripts, and set aside his own theological work. He picked up the diary of a 29-year-old who had published nothing. What Edwards published next outsold every theological work he ever wrote. More copies of the life of Brainerd circulated than all of Edwards' own writings combined. The most influential thing the greatest theologian of his age ever put into the world was not his own work. It was a dying man's diary. In 1749, Jonathan Edwards published The Life and Diary of David Brainerd. It has never gone out of print. 275 years, counting. Edwards published it not from sentiment, but conviction. He was in a theological dispute over what genuine conversion actually looked like, and Brainerd's life was the argument. This, Edwards was saying, is what a truly converted life produces. Not church attendance, not moral respectability. This. John Wesley commanded every preacher under his influence, let every preacher read carefully over the life of Brainerd. In 1785, a shoe cobbler in England named William Carey picked up the diary. He sailed for India in 1793. The modern missions movement, which placed the gospel on every continent, was born in a cobbler's shop from one dead man's diary. Henry Martin read it. Perusing the life of Brainerd, my soul was filled with holy emulation. I resolved to imitate his example. He translated the New Testament into Urdu and Persian. He died at 31. Adoniram Judson read it weeping. First American foreign missionary, Burma. Jim Elliot drew from it the language of total surrender. Martyred in Ecuador, 1956, age 28. Robert McShaney, Andrew Murray, Leonard Ravenhill. Each names Brainerd as the man who set them ablaze. Every generation since 1749 has found something different in him. The 18th century saw the model of true conversion. The 19th century saw the model missionary. The 20th century saw a radical for God. Each era has found in his story exactly what that era most needed. This is not history. This is a living fire. The question his diary asks is always the same. What would it cost you to burn like this? The answer has been the same in every century. Everything, and worth it. He lived 29 years, published nothing, built no institution, held no title. He simply refused to leave his knees, and the fire is still spreading. You stayed to the end, and as promised, here is what kept David's fire burning for 4 relentless years in the wilderness. First, the discipline of the secret place before the public place. Brainerd and a fellow student were already meeting privately to seek God before the Great Awakening arrived at Yale. He was already on his knees at Crossweeksung before the fire fell on August 8th. Every public breakthrough in his story was preceded by hidden, unwitnessed, unrewarded time with God. The discipline? You do not wait for the fire to pray. You pray until the fire comes. That secret is available to you right now. Second, the discipline of pressing through darkness without interpreting silence as abandonment. Brainerd fought crushing depression every day of his ministry. On at least 22 recorded occasions, he wished for death. He kept going not because he felt God's presence, but because he chose to meet God regardless of what he felt. The discipline. You do not wait to feel it. You go to the secret place and press. That choice is available to you right now. Third, the discipline of fasting as a weapon, not a ritual. Edwards recorded that among all the days Brainerd spent in fasting and prayer, Scarcely one passed without a blessing, often before the day ended. Fasting is not about going without food. It is about becoming, for a day, a person whose only resource is God. That weapon is available to you right now. Brainerd left privilege for a dirt floor. Yale denied restoration, and God redirected him to a mission no one had mapped. He preached 4 years gravely ill, no degree, no building, nothing published, and declared he would not have spent his life otherwise for the whole world. The question is not whether you admire him. It is whether what God called you to is waiting on better conditions. His fire was always proportional to surrender. Comment below with, "I will not leave my knees," to declare you are ready to meet God in the secret place, whatever it costs. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, like and subscribe to Cloud of Witnesses for more life-changing stories of faith that will equip you to boldly fulfill the call of God in your life. This week, set aside 1 hour before the day begins and spend it in prayer and silence. No agenda. Bring yourself to God and stay. Do this 7 consecutive days and journal what changes. What if a man buried his wife and children on a distant island and chose to return? What if the people who killed everyone he loved became the ones he could not stop loving? What if that return became the turning point for an entire nation? Watch this next story to discover John Gibson Payton, the spiritual secret that turned devastating loss into unstoppable fire, and the question that will make you reconsider every reason you have stayed where it is safe.